What's up guys, today we'll be going over the Divinity drama. Does it actually need a nerf or not? And I might be a little bit late to the party making a video on this, but I had other videos scheduled, so I'm making it now. So if you haven't seen what this entire thing is about, it's from Salt on Twitter explaining a nerf to Divinity, and I'm sure you've already seen the tweets, or if not, I trust that you can read yourself. But just reviewing what he said, basically what his proposed nerf was to make Div apply a 0% debuff that overrides every other debuff in the game, but still gives the crit bubble, making it so you would have to choose between running the crit bubble to make it easier to hit the boss, or running no crit bubble and using debuff to be more optimal and result in the highest damage. It's also worth noting that he said just removing the debuff from the weapon would not be enough, because you would just simply run other debuffs in its place along with the div for the same result as it is right now. Alright, so what is div? Well, div is obviously a 30% debuff that also has the crit bubble, making it very easy to hit any boss in the game, and it is without a doubt the best of the debuffs in the game, because it's only one that also does someone else that greatly benefits your team, like the crit bubble. It does require to give up one person's damage, but for 99 out of 100 situations, it's definitely worth that trade-off. And the one situation it's not is redeem in World's First races, because we're just that bad. But I think you get the point. Overall, div is by far the best debuff, and it's really not even debatable. So is his nerf even like a remotely good idea? Well, if you think about what his nerf would actually do to the game and different players of different skill levels, for the top end players, they would just simply never use the div and always use the debuff for optimal DPS, right? And just simply hit their shots. And those players have been doing that for years in Destiny 1 on controller, D2 on controller, then D2 on mouse and keyboard. So trust me, they would not be affected at all from this change. They would just simply never use div unless it was like the one random boss that is impossible to hit. But as you look at lower and lower skilled players, the further down you go, the more mandatory it'll be to run the div, and you would just simply never have the opportunity to run a debuff. And there would be a crossover point of, if you can hit X amount of shots, I believe it's like 76% of your shots, you know, a debuff would be better. But once you get below that, it becomes even more mandatory to run div instead of a debuff, making it even worse than it is right now. So if you look at his proposed nerf, it like unequally punishes players of different skill level, and as you go lower and lower skill, the more punished they get, which is obviously not a good idea or very healthy at all. Another issue with his proposed nerf is he said it would result in a situation where you would have to either choose to run div to make it easy or not run div for most optimal damage. To be fair, that's already true in the game right now. No need to change div to make that a true statement. If you don't run div right now and just use like a tether for your debuff and don't sacrifice one person's damage, it is technically the highest DPS in the game for a fire team right now. So if you're trying to be super optimal, that's already true. Like, we don't need to change div to make that a true statement. Let's just say Bungie decides to nerf the div. Who knows, maybe that's not even something they want to do. We don't have the data to see if it's even like used by an overwhelming majority of the community or not. Let's say they do. What would be like the easiest way to nerf it? Well, simply just remove the debuff from the weapon and just leave it with its crit bubble function. So if you wanted to run both the crit bubble and a debuff for a boss fight, you would need a tractor cannon or a tether, or even like jump down to one of the 15% debuffs with like the void grenades. And this would instantly make all the other debuffs in the game relevant again. Right now, you just use div for everything, right? But with this change, to reach optimal damage, you would have to run one tether for longer boss fights, maybe even two. And Salt said this change wouldn't do anything because it would still be like the same amount of damage overall. But I disagree, because now you actually have to, you know, run the right characters and time when you use your tethers and things like that, and not just run like the best supers on your class every single time you do a boss fight, because you know there's gonna be a div. So it instantly makes a lot of those other debuffs relevant to the game once again, which they haven't been for a long time. And I think that would overall be the easiest nerf to the weapon. But another idea that I think would be kind of better overall for different activities in the game, an idea that I came up with, but then I saw Chevy had the same idea. What would happen if you give div two firing modes that you can change between by holding reload? One would create the crit bubble, and the other one would be a 30% debuff. And the reason I really like this idea is for raid boss fights. It'd be the same as the previous nerf, where you just use div for the crit aspect, then run a different debuff on top of it. But I think for 3-man activities, for example, like Nightfalls or things with champions, since Div has built-in overload and it being good for like champions is kind of part of its identity, I think one of the things that makes it really good in those 3-man activities with champions is the ranged 30% debuff for every single champion. And I think that's more important than the actual crit bubble itself. So if you could choose between which one for different situations, I think that would be like the most perfect way to nerf the weapon, because it'll still be good but not like overpowered for like GMs, Master Rifles, things like that, and the same for raids. But overall, if Bungie decides that Div is something that needs to be nerfed, which who knows, maybe they think it's perfectly fine, I think there's definitely multiple different ways to nerf it in a way that doesn't like unequally punish different skill levels. So yeah, I think that's all I gotta say about this. Let me know what you think about this topic down below. Like usual, thanks for watching, catch you guys next time.